Hi there, my name's Colin McMichael, and I'm the Education Coordinator here at TreeFolks. In this third part of our four-part video series, I'm going to be talking to you about cedar elms. Cedar elms are the second most common tree in Austin after the ash juniper, and the most common of all of our elms. So there are several native species of elms in Texas, but cedar elm is really the one you're going to encounter the most in central Texas. So I've got a nice cedar elm right here in my backyard, and now this guy's pretty tall. He's about maybe 25 feet tall now. They get bigger than this, maybe up to 40, 50 feet if you water them enough. But they're super drought tolerant. So cedar elms don't need a lot of water to establish. So they pretty much grow anywhere in Austin. They're one of the more weedy trees where they'll just kind of show up in your garden. Now cedar elm leaves are usually all the way up there, but I cut some off so we can look at them here. So if you touch these leaves, it kind of feels like a combination of a cat's tongue and cardstock. The leaves are also alternately placed along the stem here. So you can see alternate leaves, and they have uneven leaf bases, which actually is really important. All elms are going to have uneven leaf bases. That's actually a trait for the entire elm family.
The thick, almost leathery texture of the cedar elm's leaves has led to its Latin name, Ulmus crassifolia, which directly translates to thick-leafed elm. Cedar elm leaves have rounded or occasionally indented tips and serrated leaf margins. All native elm species have leaves with doubly serrated margins in which the teeth of the serrations have secondary serrations on top of them. Cedar elms are so called because of their propensity to grow near juniper trees here in central Texas. Cedar elm bark is ridged and brownish gray. It generally does not change dramatically with age, though younger trees are known to have corky protrusions known as wings on smaller branches. Luckily, they always have fewer wings than winged elms. As they grow, cedar elms cup their branches inward to shade their foliage and their trunks from the brutal Texas sun. Often, the outer crown of cedar elms is not actively photosynthesizing, and instead serves as more of a protection for their inner leaves. Besides being drought-adapted shade trees native to central Texas, cedar elms bring a host of ecosystem services to the table. The dense, twiggy crown of cedar elms catches rainfall and reduces runoff. They provide nesting habitat for birds, especially in the cavities often found in their trunks. Their wood is prized for its density in handle making and burns hotter longer as firewood than many other native species. The seeds of cedar elms, much like all elms, are edible, and wildlife such as our white-tailed deer browse the foliage. Luckily, the only other trees that can easily confuse you while trying to identify a cedar elm would be other species of elms. We have several native and non-native elms that might make identification difficult.
I am here at Hornsby Bend Trail. I am currently on my way down the trail to the river to go look for an American elm tree, because I'm pretty sure you can find one here. Now, American elms in central Texas are pretty much reserved to the banks of streams and rivers and stuff, places where it's really wet. The cedar elms, the winged elms, that's really what you're going to find in those upland conditions. When you get down to a wet zone, that's an American elm's favorite habitat. Now, they don't really get too big down here in the south, but near a creek, an American elm can become a sizable tree. I hope I can find one. All right, so this path now is gonna break off to the right, and I'm gonna go down there because that's towards the river. And I'm almost positive I'm gonna be able to find one of these elms down by the Colorado River. Here we go. Here I am, down at the end of the trail. You can see the river down there. And right over here, we have an American elm tree. So this is an American elm. It's got large spreading canopy, big wide branches. The leaves are pretty high up there, so you can't really see that on this example. But they do get quite large if they have access to water here. So here's the American elm foliage. You can see this one's actually been eaten on pretty hard by a bunch of bugs. But you can see these leaves, they're pretty big. They're about 2 inches wide, about 3 to 5 inches long, and they've got a serrated edge. So that's a much bigger leaf than any other elm tree we have here in central Texas. I'm now here up at Red Bluff Preserve to look for some winged elms, because this is some pretty upland habitat with some pretty gravelly soil, so I'm pretty sure I can find them up here. Now, a winged elm is probably the smallest of our native elms here in central Texas. Winged elms look a lot like cedar elms, but they have wings. and they really don't get over 6 feet tall, so there's that. But I'm pretty sure I've seen them here before. They're up by the lookout, so hopefully I'll be able to find some up there. Here I am approaching the summit of Red Bluff, and now you can see why they call it the Mont Bonnell of the East. We got this Austin skyline right there, and if we head over this way, look at that. A little stand of winged elms. So these are all winged elms right here. You can see they're actually very, very small trees. But the way you can tell it's a winged elm are these corky protrusions on the bark right here. You can see that there are at least 2, sometimes 4 rows of corky protrusions. That's how you can tell it's a winged elm. Some elms will only have 2 rows of corky protrusions, like this one right here. That's actually not a winged elm. This is a cedar elm. So cedar elms can sometimes trip you up by growing wings, but only winged elms, like this little one right here, are going to have these 4 rows of corky protrusions. Besides the 3 native species of elms that I've shown you today, which is the cedar elm, the American elm, and the winged elm, we also have 2 non-native species that are commonly encountered here in Central Texas. The first is the Chinese or lacebark elm. This is commonly planted as an urban tree. It likes urban conditions, it likes drought, and it does really well. Sometimes it does a little too well though and escapes cultivation, so you can find them around. So this is a Chinese elm. He's in a pot, so he's a little smaller than they usually are. They get to big tree sized, but you can see these leaves are relatively different than our cedar elm leaves. So these have points on the end, and they have a single set of serrations, whereas our native elms don't. They have doubly serrated leaves. Siberian elms were planted as a small screening hedge, but they kind of escaped cultivation and now they're super invasive. So Siberian elms also have small pointed leaves, but they don't get the pretty orange bark when they get larger.